Good morning, everybody. My name is Vladan Petkovic. I'm the Industry Talks editor here at IDFA, and I'm happy to welcome you to this industry talk on shifting European distribution landscape and future audiences. The talk is hosted by Reacham, a partnership between virtual cinema pioneers Picl and Medialoc, and is supported by Creative Europe Media Desk NL. I'll let our moderator, Michael Gubbins, take you into the talk. Welcome and thank you.
Good morning, and congratulations on finding this place. There must be hundreds of people walking around who will arrive during the next few minutes. But what we're going to be talking about today, I think, there's a slight change. So the idea that we're talking about future audiences, I think, can be misleading. We're always thinking about the future, but this is about the realities of today. And I think when we're talking about the way that audiences are behaving, we're trying to move away in this discussion from the idea of replacement. The idea that there is a new world which is streaming, and there's an old world which is cinema, and somehow there's going to be a replacement there. What we're going to be talking about mainly is this agile approach that we need in order to reach audiences, in order to be able to... Well, let me give you 3 words that I think need to be in your head when this discussion is here. There is reach. So if we use the power of cinema, we use the power of streaming, we use the power of all those other elements that are now available to us, we can reach more people. And that means get into more homes, that means get... to be seen by more people. Engagement is about in building the richness of that relationship. And again, in this world, and we're going to hear the word hybrid quite a lot today, in a hybrid world, there's different ways that you might engage with the content that you're actually watching. And the last thing is the idea of impact. That hybrid world increases your impact commercially, but also, I think, and this is particularly important for a documentary festival, that notion of social impact, that notion that what you're doing by finding different ways to reach those audiences and engage those audiences, you can change the way people think, you can change behaviors. And we're going to have a panel that I think will address a lot of those issues. As was mentioned, this is hosted by Reacham, which is an initiative with Medialoc and Picl. I have to say straight away that Creative Europe, as ever, has played an essential part, and I think will be an essential part moving forward of all the changes we talk about today. So let's start by bringing up Norcia and Anka from Picl, who are behind the... Oh! I like this making an entrance. You could have just... A coup de théâtre, I think they call that. So let's kick off with just a few of a bit of the terminology, because I think it's really important. So Picl, first of all, tell us about Picl, and tell us about Picl in the context of virtual cinema. Just explain virtual cinema and where Picl fits in.
I'll just quickly go through what Picl is. I don't know if everybody in the venue knows what it is. It's a virtual cinema platform, as you said, and it's a collaboration with 39 cinemas in the Netherlands and 4 in Belgium. And that's actually the virtual cinema aspect of it, that it is a collaboration. We would like to blend the cinema experience with online streaming. It's things that we do centrally, so legal stuff, rights management, marketing, the technology is something that we do centrally, but especially on the marketing side and the content side, we also work really closely together with our cinemas.
Yeah, so Norcia, I think that's how it works technically, but I think the really key thing here is that cinemas are directly engaged. So that idea of competition isn't really there. The cinemas are part of that, an essential part of this whole experience.
Yes, and very important to mention is also that the cinemas receive a percentage of the revenue.
Yeah.
So for the cinemas, it doesn't matter if people come to the cinema or watch a film at home, because they get a part of the revenue anyways. And the thing is that we really work together with these cinemas, and we try to blend communication and marketing. And I have so much to say about this, I don't know where to start. But this is the key. And we did a lot of research on this as well. And we found out that people watch films at home. They do. And a lot of people who love art house films and documentary prefer to go to a cinema. But I think everybody here agrees that not all the time you can go to a cinema. There are so many reasons why you can't make it. You're ill, you can't find a babysitter, the film isn't screening near your home, it's not at a good time that it's screening. So then you stay at home and you have the choice either to watch or spend an hour looking for a film you want to watch on Netflix, or go to your cinema, which offers a small collection of the best films streaming at home.
Yeah, so Anke, I think we're going to hear the word community quite a lot today. You build a community around your cinema, and I think the discussion which we've been having over many, many years is if the cinema becomes a place where the streaming is also part of the offer, the brand is still the cinema, does that affect the way that the people going to the cinema? Is it going to cannibalize the cinema audience, or can it actually make people feel a richer relationship with the cinema, which obviously helps films and helps the cinema itself?
Yeah, that's obviously what we believe, that you can take the cinema experience outside the four walls. And that is something that we talk a lot about with our cinemas on what is a cinema, what is a film experience, what is a cinema experience, and whose audience is this? And we did several tests last year, for example, where we were able to create a group of people that were actually watching a lot of films online in specific cinemas to convince them to go see a film in the cinema itself. So it can go either way. It's what you said. It's not the one or the other. Yeah, it's supplemental.
So who's going to tell me about Reachum, Nortje? What, apart from the terrible name, but Picl was a terrible
name.
It's
it
not.
Says everything.
Picl was a terrible name. The great
everything.
thing with names is they become brilliant after a while, because it's like if it's still going. So Reachum, tell me about that.
Well, Reachum, as you said, is a collaboration with Picl and Medialoc, and it's funded by Creative Europe as well. And our aim is together that we can reach or make European art house films more accessible. And we started out with Reachum actually just in or just after the last COVID lockdowns. And what we found out is that with Picl, we started collaborating online and offline and streaming way before the lockdowns. Then during the lockdowns, obviously all the cinemas were closed, the views were sky high, and we had a lot of questions from cinemas and distributors who were really interested in what we were doing. And also we saw a lot of very other interesting experiments all over Europe. And when all the cinemas opened, everybody was, of course, really happy and wanted the audiences to come back to the cinemas. But we thought, well, wait a minute, we can have both, maybe. It's not what you said, it's not either, but it's and. And so we did a research. We did this together with Europa Cinemas and Europa Distribution, where we asked all European cinemas and distributors about how they thought about hybrid releasing of films or hybrid offering of films.
And Anke, maybe you can then. This is a great double act thing going on here. But give us some of the results from that research, because there hasn't been much research in this area. This feels quite a significant thing to have done.
Yeah. I'll just make it very summarizing.
Yeah.
What we saw is most cinemas were actually seeing, or a lot of cinemas, I have to say, not everyone, are seeing a hybrid business model as an interesting model for the future. But there are several problems that they encounter in terms of technology, marketing, actually the content. They're driving a cinema, so they don't have the experience in running a platform or building the right business model for it. How is it something that you do? So that mainly came out, and that was for us interesting because, as Noortje said, after COVID, the tendency was to focus fully on cinema going. But most of the cinemas that we spoke to, also distributors actually, thought that this was the interesting way to go. Yeah,
it's interesting, Noortje. I think what we're saying, I think, for me, that what comes out of the research is that technically we can do all kinds of things now. We're already at that stage. But there needs to be a cultural shift because the hybrid approach isn't just adding on. It's actually about rethinking your model. And that seems to me still a significant challenge. I wonder how people get past that.
True, and not everybody gets past this, I must say, but that's why we are all here together and sharing interesting experiments and interesting cases. What we think is it's not the same for every country. In the Netherlands and Belgium, we have started Picl, which is a central platform, and it works really well. But it doesn't work that way in other countries. So each country has a different infrastructure, you have different audiences, you have different cinema corporations. So each territory or each cinema or each distributor is looking for their own best way. And what we try to do with Reach'em is to share our experiences and share other interesting experiences which have gone really well and which are really inspiring. But that is a thing. It doesn't have to be the same in each country.
No, and that's something we always need to keep in mind when we do these kind of talks. There's a vast difference between those different European countries in terms of how they perceive cinema, how they perceive this whole basis, and of course, access to investment, etc.
Definitely, I think it's. I think we're mainly advocating the idea that we need to talk about and rethink our digital strategy. It's something that we must do now. There's no way back, and that we have to think about the audience of the future or the audience of now. Yeah. Because it has changed after COVID. It has become more hybrid. So we could ignore this, but we could also take an advantage of it.
Yeah, has COVID changed? I'll ask you because as a supplement to your point, but I'm always interested. This idea that COVID was this cut-off point. There was a before COVID and an after COVID, but was that change not already there? And did it give momentum to what happened, or did something specifically change in COVID that we're now having to adapt to?
Honestly, I think it gave momentum, but it's definitely now. Maybe we're crossing the bridge, but the bridge is definitely crossed, I believe. I mean, when you see it streaming, films by streamers are now on A-list festivals. They get released in cinemas maybe after a 2 weeks window. People do tend to be more used to watching their films at any platform. And the whole idea was from the beginning that we started is that we wanted to keep this audience close to the cinema instead of losing them to big global streamers.
I can see that. So Noortje, with a documentary audience here, it gives us a test study here. So if you are making documentaries and you're looking at this hybrid world, I think what the research suggests is there are opportunities there for actually changing that relationship. I just want give us an idea. So for the kind of documentary making that where the advantages might be here.
Yes, one of the examples that we see in the Netherlands is that a lot of documentaries are released in cinemas, but in event releases. So they're not screened every evening, but they're screened 1 or 2 times in a week, and some even once, and they have a Q&A with the director or someone else present. And of course, this is very interesting for a cinema, and it draws a lot of people. But of course, as a documentary maker, you've been working on engaging your audience for maybe a year or even longer, and then it all comes down to this one evening that you have this Q&A in Rotterdam, for example. So if you can't make it, then your documentary is really hard to find for all the audience who has the intention to watch it at that time. And we see that that really works well in the Netherlands, where as the cinemas say, please come to our cinema and we have a very interesting evening with this director. Come to us and join us. If you can't make it, watch it with us online. And you can even, of course, enrich these online streams with Q&As or with interactive Q&As. There's a lot to do, but we see in the Netherlands that especially this works really well for documentary makers, and also because we work together with all these cinemas, we have a lot of insights in audiences. So it is easier to find audiences that are really interested, or that we think are interested in these films, and we can engage them more easily.
So understanding how those audiences think and behave, the data element is really an essential part of your offer. And if you want to build momentum and you want to build that relationship, you need to know that audience better. And Anke, I think what you're suggesting with Picl is there is that sharing of data is as important in some ways, maybe more important than the sharing of revenues. It's you're building a community that you understand.
Yes, that's true. But it's also a difficult task, sharing data. It's not something that you do very easily. So it's something that we've been talking about for many months now. What is it that you share? Do you speak the same language? What are we going to do with it? How are we going to segmentize?
Yeah, segment.
Segment our audiences. Are we going to do it on the same way? So it is. We're now at the start of this because we work with so many independent cinemas. It's not a cinema group. We're not Netflix. We don't have. So it's an interesting task to do.
Again, I think this is going to come out in the discussion we have next. Is that it's again culturally, and we live in a knowledge economy where the big players, the algorithm and big data is what's driving their business. But we still have a way to go, I think, in the independent industry to make data a central part of what we're doing. Are there any, Noortje, are there any kind of technological changes that might help that? I mean, we look at things like AI and so on that in quite negative ways, but theoretically, if you look beyond the culture, there are new mechanisms for building greater knowledge and data. And are there other technologies that could actually help create the kind of culture we're talking about?
Yes, that's true, and technology helps. But what also helps is that we see the cinemas as a sort of a gatekeeper for the most interesting films. So it's not all AI. It's also your personal feelings and your personal knowledge as a programmer of a cinema. And you can use it not only in the cinema, but also online. But what really helps, of course, is if you have a very interesting program or screening of a film, that it makes it easier to find your audiences. Not everybody is interested in all the films that are screening, so it's easier to find your audiences, and technology, for example, helps with this as well.
And I think at the heart of your work as well, it recognizes that the way that we engage with films is quite different. So here at a festival, that's one way that we would want to do it. In a cinema, that you might have a very personal relationship with that cinema and with the people programming. And with streaming, you want to watch things when you want to watch it. It's not that we've become that the audience, the future audience, is demanding something brand new. It's more that we expect everything when we want it. Do you think that's the case?
I believe very much that's the case. Yes, and this same person loves the cinema experience. Yeah, but also wants to sit on the couch with a bag of chips when they can get out the door. I mean, they want to see the films. So yeah, I definitely believe that.
You had me at bag of chips. I was already thinking that's me you were describing. But I think what you're saying, I think if we can just kind of summarize here, what you're talking about here is there are different experiences. What Reacham is showing can work, and what Picl does on a day-to-day basis in the Netherlands is take those different aspects of the experience and try to bring them together as a single offer that really means that you have that kind of whole life relationship with film. I should have written your publicity there. I think that was
Thank
quite
you,
good.
Michael.
So just finally, where do we go from here? So what's the next stage for Reacham, Noortje?
Yeah, with Reacham, this is the last year, so we learned a lot of things and we had a lot of interesting experiences. We want to share this all with everybody, and if you're interested, you can read all about this at reacham.eu.
That's good, reacham.eu. I was going to ask you that very question. And just lastly then for Anke, Picl, what's the next steps for Picl?
Well, actually, it's building on what we've done in the last years. We're actually renewing the platform and even working more closely with the cinemas, especially on the data marketing aspect.
Yeah.
And be able to reach a larger audience and make sure European art films are more accessible and available to a bigger group of people.
That's great. And how many cinemas do you already have involved?
39 in the Netherlands and 4 in Belgium.
Okay,
now.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And Picl, P-I-C-L, which turns out is genius. So all of your names, you know that I think they're brilliant. So Picl, P-I-C-L, is it .com? So
.nl.
Yeah.
Or B.
Or B-E,
Yes.
or N-L. There we go. So go away, have a look at the research, but I think that gives us a great platform for what we're going to be talking about. So Noortje and Anke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if I can now bring up the panel to come and join us. I've destroyed the stage. I'm really sorry about this. So I may come sliding around, but can we bring the panel up? We've got Mark. Are they here? Sarah? Or are they still trying to find us? Marinia? Piet? Wherever you like. That's interesting. The psychologists will be working out why you've chosen the sofa and the chairs here.
To be closer to you.
That would be the thing then. So if I can just go from my right, or your left to right then. So we have Mark Smit from Cinea. We have Sarah Most from Together Films. We have Gert, which is, if I said that right, and Stevens, which is very easy for me. And we have Marinia Gerard from, well, we'll talk about where you're from as we go through. So having heard that, you know, this idea that we've entered a hybrid world, we've entered a world with new ways to distribute, and importantly, new ways to engage audiences. What we'll talk about here is, as we talked about reach, engagement, and impact, but we have here a range from cinemas, festivals, that kind of social impact element. But let's start with you, Mark. Cinea, obviously, an extremely well-established, influential art house group, but recently you've had the Mubi deal, which people will be aware of. But the world that we're talking about here, this changing world, just give me a perspective from Cinea that's been around and adapted a lot. So what's changed and what's important for us to understand?
I think you started quite well today by talking about evolution or revolution or whatever. And I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on COVID and what happened then. But I think it's, you know, as far as we're concerned, it's more evolution than revolution. And there are moments of acceleration. So a lot of where we are now is the fruit of a longer shift, you know. And it's also a complex ecosystem film, and it doesn't change overnight. But if you, in terms of, you know, compared to 10 years ago or whatever, there's a few big trends that have impacted our business, you know, in which hybrid is, you know, one element. I think if you look at the Netherlands specifically, it's I always call it a post-chronology market. So the windows still exist as moments to do stuff, but there is a lot of flexibility, you know. We still believe wholly in the theatrical release as being the main moment, but you know, beyond that, what you do during the theatrical release or beyond that, there's a lot of flexibility. So that's one big difference to, I don't know if there's people from France here, for example, or whatever, where chronology is much stricter, or in Poland as well, you know. So that's one thing which is important. The other thing which is a big impact on the way the business is working is that we're a director-driven company, so we have, you know, this year the Zone of Interest, now Substance, Outrun, we're going to Almodovar and others. The appetite for our type of cinema is global, much more than it was 10 years ago. I think Parasite had an impact, people watching Netflix, foreign language, blah, blah, blah. So the way European cinema is attractive to markets like the US or other places means that there is a slight change in the dynamics in a way. There's more equity financing, there are more global deals, and there are mini studios that have set, you know, that have been growing in the last 10 years, like A24, like Mubi, Focus Features is still there, or Searchlight from Disney. So there is that dynamic, which means that there are new gatekeepers, as you mentioned before. So that's the second thing that is important, is the appetite for the cinema. The third one, I think, which is important, is the gatekeepers. I think 10 years ago, people would read the paper, still super important. They would look at IMDb, they would look at Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. But now they are increasingly following A24, they're on Letterboxd, they're on so many other places. And our job is to be, in a way, DJs or you know, kind of, we manage constellation of sources of influence in a way as we work on a film. And that's something which requires a lot of work. I mean, the team is there as well. We have, you know, people that work very hard to, as we prepare a release, to tap into all these sources of influence before we spend money and do more of the free publicity. And partnership in that has become critical. And when I talk about these gatekeepers, I think cinemas are also gatekeepers that are amazing, you know, because cinemas, at least in the Netherlands, but probably in many other countries, they have great social media reach, they know who they're talking to, they organize events. So our partnership is, yes, it's with brands or with institutions and stuff like that, but it's critical also to partner with the cinemas to have impact. So on your hybrid thing, I'm not always too worried about online, theatrical, or that tralala, you know, the kind of obsession that is often there to say we need to change, we need to change. I think, you know, if you have a good film or a good cake, people will be interested, and then you find the way how to you know, like distribute it in many different ways.
There's a kind of acid test there, though, which is, can you get a film which breaks molds, which is different, which isn't what everyone expects, in a world where it feels like algorithms and those new gatekeepers are pushing you towards a certain type of content louder than ever, and then you have the noise of a billion other things being made at any particular time. To get those moments, to find those films which break through that noise, is that still possible? And does this hybrid world that we're talking about, does that support the opportunity for a diverse, exciting, different film to find its audience?
It's tricky, but if I look at our experience, we also say for the last 10 years we've been building our social media reach to be really a B2C brand, not just a B2B brand. So we have a direct connection via the newsletter, via all the social media with viewers. So we also work very hard to, when we have a film that is not the one that was an award-winning one or one that is supported by some of these machines, then we need to work hard to find the right partner, to do the previews, to seed the film in the right way. And I think, for example, The Quiet Girl was an example of a film that far beyond our expectation, but it came a little bit from nowhere in a sense, and then suddenly it became, you know, like a big success of the year in the Arthouse sector in the Netherlands. So I think it's always possible, but you need to work hard, and you need to also invest in the people and in making sure that people see that the film is there. So it's also the work. That's the work of a distributor.
Do you think that I'm interested, the distributor was almost the kind of invisible, you know, we talked about the middle men in those days, but now what you're talking about is almost your brand is also a gatekeeper idea as well. Is that something you consciously do, that you build a slate, which is a cinear slate, which is, you know, certainly A24 and Mubi have now got a much clearer place in the market. Is that essential to be able to get those new films in, that people recognize that you stand for something in terms of quality and approach?
We do it the way we do it, and other people do it differently. So that's, you know, everyone have their way. But we strongly believe that we should be a label, and we should be known to people. And I think it helped us. For example, we have a channel on Amazon, Cinea Presents. And that's also came when they looked at our, you know, at the Google, at the analytics or whatever, they saw that we were, you know, playing the game of, you know, being very active on social media. So it has benefits. And we've worked for a long time with the A24s and the Mubi very, very happily. So it's always a, as I say, ecosystem. But I think for us, it's very beneficial, I would say.
So just to finish on that point, the ecosystem idea, what you're talking about is that the gatekeepers maybe in the world that we're talking about have shifted a bit, but cinemas remain a gatekeeper, which is really important because it's within communities, and then you build those relationships with those other new brands, and together you can actually find ways to reach those different audiences where they are.
That's right. And as a final point, maybe on another trend that you talked about is AI. I think, you know, there's Janneke and Julia here in the room from the team. We are, you know, starting to use it more and more as a way to analyze our releases in terms of understanding. You know, we release 2 films a year on average. Each film, we get a lot of reports from the different companies we work with to do that campaign here, that campaign there, and stuff like that. They send us reports. We have, you know, a huge database of information that we, you know, on our numbers and everything. So we'll use AI more as a way to gather, to siphon all that data, and to be able to then, you know, look at patterns, look at, oh, this worked then, could it work now, whatever, and make, you know, educated guesses for the next ones. So that's an area where AI will be super helpful, and we also get the inputs from, for example, Cineville, which is the pass in the Netherlands for Arthouse cinema, which has, you know, tens of thousands of subscribers, and they also give access to the information about who goes to which cinema, when, and stuff like that. So we can.
Yeah, no, I can see that, and whatever that noise was. You need to work that out in letters.
It works,
yeah. But that, I think we can stop there. We'll just if we all make the noise that we think represents the new economy, I think that would be great. But data and the richness of those relationships, I think, is being really well reflected. So Marinia, you know, Kino Baranami, you're in Krakow. You're talking about an established cinema, but I mean, you can certainly see beyond that. But that gatekeeper thing first, you recognise that idea that cinemas are still important, and how do they have they built, and how do you build on that gatekeeper role?
Yeah, this is actually, I think, the main role of Kino pod Baranami, our cinema, and many art house cinemas. The gatekeeper, the curator is what I also like to call it, because we generally pick the films that we think are worth seeing, and we are presenting them to our audiences who trust our choices. So basically, for sure, this is the way of creating buzz for a film, using our social media, but also using various events that we did do with the films. Would it be a discussion or a meeting with a filmmaker? It always brings more visibility to the film. And and that requires a lot of hard work, I noticed that nowadays, in order to thrive, cinema has to really work, I think, much harder than before.
Yeah, it's about building a social place, isn't it? It's not singular anymore, your offer. It's not like you've got a program that people go along to. It's events, it's the social, it's you. It's actually the curators and the programmers. People now want to know what they're getting, and that feels to me like you have to build that personal relationship to be a gatekeeper.
Yeah, exactly, and so curation is one thing, and community building is another thing. So this is basically what we do when we organize discussions, themed discussions. We have people who come to the cinema and they come back and they meet new people. They open up, they discuss their private lives after the screening, and they make new acquaintances. So they become really like glued together, but both to the cinema, but to each other as well. So this is the group then that we can present new films to, and this is how it keeps going. So basically this idea of theater experience and community experience is like of course it is like the most important thing.
I guess the hybrid element of this too is that there is the physical space where you meet, but social media still plays an important part. To create a community, you can't just hope that people are going to turn up and be there. The relationships between your audience, they need work too.
Yes, all the social media have to be taken care of, for different age groups, different social medium, of course. And about the hybrid, I don't know if this is the moment to mention our cinema online as well. Because apart from being a regular art house in the center of Krakow, we also opened a e-cinema, our own VOD platform. Of course, we were forced to do it during the pandemic. We did it very quickly, 1 month after closing of our cinema, after COVID broke down. We were ready to open as the first cinema with its own VOD platform in Poland. So it was really big news in Poland, and we were, we are quite a recognized brand, and everyone was really surprised and happy to see that we moved online for that moment, and this was the way that our audiences could support us in the moment of closure. But we decided to keep that platform. Of course, our main focus now is the offline cinema, but we're keeping the platform as a way of continuation. When the film that is screened in our cinema is gone from the cinema, sometime after it goes to our online platform, and it can be rented as a pay-per-view. It's not a subscription, it's a pay-per-view system. So it can be rented, and so it's a way of continuing support of the cinema, because the money from the rental go to us. Part of what goes to the distributor, of course, and this is also a sort of a prolongation of the cooperation that we have with distributors. So with the same distributors that we cooperate for the cinema, we cooperate with them as well for the online platform. Mainly independent cinema, because we still do not have access to studio films for the online, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, so it was added on, but it's not. It's just part of that hybrid offer. But tell me about the demographics, because that's actually a really important part of this. Is that, I mean, there are lots of art house cinemas you go to. I like going to them because I feel like the youngest person in the room, and that's the only place that happens now. But getting those younger audiences, is that something that your approach that you're now taking helps you? What is the demographics of your cinema?
Of course, the sort of teenagers are like the most difficult group right now for us to reach. We have very good relations with students, with grown-ups, sort of, with older citizens, but also with the kids. But the teenagers are the most difficult age group for now, but we are just trying to think of new ideas to promote the cinema with them. We just started a project called Young Ambassadors of Kino pod Baranami, of our cinema. That means that we cooperate with youngsters who get to know how the cinema works. We ask them to promote films among their peers at schools. So they help us sort of program the cinema a little bit for them, and they help us promote them. And and we try to have them in the cinema as often as possible. They also use our online platform aside. But this is what we try to do.
Yeah, I think it's an important point that's just worth making, that it's an active audience we're talking about now. It's not one that passively comes in. And it's hard to do. I mean, to try and build action and try to build that kind of input. But if you want a diversity and a future, it feels like what you're saying is you have no choice. You simply have to find ways to engage. And perhaps the strength of of a younger audience is that there is an expectation that you're not going to passively consume. You're actually going to be doing things, and that feels to me like a challenge.
Yes, and we really have to take care of those age groups, kids and youngsters, because they are our future audience. Because we have to keep them, we have to teach them how to love the cinema, how to love the experience, watching the film together. And because if we don't do that, our current audience will disappear soon, and we will be left with nothing. So this is really an age group that we have to care for. Yeah, but we'll be dead then. I actually think that sometimes the attitude is that the demographics are changing, and that it's reaching a richer kind of middle income, higher income audience is actually more profitable. And those youngsters, it feels like a commitment. But you're making that commitment. Let me move on to Sarah, because I think this perhaps moves over to your kind of approach here. So first of all, tell us about Together Films.
Yeah, so Together, we've been around for about 10 years. We started out doing impact strategy and impact campaigns, so working with social justice content to help them find the right audiences to deliver on social change goals. And we got investment a few years ago to expand into international sales and distribution. So we have two different businesses under one banner. One is very much focused on the commercial return to investors, to producers, the financial properties. And then the other side is this commitment to social justice. So we balance at all times what is the right way to release a film to have the right impact, but the impact in different manners of both commerciality and social justice at that time. So each release plan is looking at both all the different commercial opportunities, as every other agent distributor needs to do, but also saying to ourselves, okay, how do we get politicians to watch this? They don't pay. How do we get kind of stakeholders that need to see it to watch it? So it's balancing the right opportunity for engagement and dissemination of a project in the right time and order that kind of makes sense.
It does make sense. Let me ask you about a couple of things. I know I'd like to ask you to show me some specifics, but the festival, it seems to me, is a really critical part of this kind of landscape. But sometimes I think it's underestimated. And with documentary, a big majority of festivals have grown up in the last kind of 30 years, and documentary has become something that has its own kind of culture. And it feels to me the festival circuit has been essential. And you too are, the festival circuit is at the heart of your work.
Yeah, so we represent our titles as they go out to festivals and secure them premieres. But another division of the business is we do film festival marketing directly. So I was the marketing director for Doc NYC for a number of years. We led the marketing for Human Rights Watch Film Festival in London and New York. And there's so much data that these festivals hold about audiences. I mean, you're thinking about kind of test screenings, understanding marketing, relationships. My call to action for everybody is like festivals working out how they can share additional data with distributors and stakeholders about film audiences would be really, really beneficial because there's so much that we can kind of learn there. During lockdown, we've been working on Human Rights Watch at this point for now about 5 years at that point. Also, the festival's closed this year, and it's one of the most saddest things that's happened in the industry this year. So big love to my Human Rights Watch colleagues. So we immediately had to pivot to find some kind of online opportunity. We were about to go live with the London edition in March, which was at the Barbican, Curzon, other main kind of cinemas in the UK. And so we sort of go with a kind of what we call a platform agnostic approach. We work with all the different online platforms. With Human Rights Watch, we use Shift 72 as one of the offerings. We pivoted to online, many late nights on Zoom with the New York team till like 3 in the morning, being like, what are we doing? Oh my God, let's do this, let's do this. And then had an online version ready for the New York edition that was coming up. And Human Rights Watch traditionally had only had a base in physical cinemas in New York. They had a San Diego outpost as well, they had in physical cinemas. And the online edition reached every single state in America. And we were tracking, I'm a total data geek, if anyone has ever met me. Spreadsheets are my life, and I love information. So we were tracking in real time, like a geo-mapping of where all the users were coming from. And every time like a new state someone was watching, I was like, yes, okay, got this one. Like, who knows the one in Hawaii? Like, let's get someone there. And it was amazing because the reach of that festival had never gone outside the physicality of a physical building in New York and San Diego. And suddenly we had the whole country tuning in. And especially with the types of programming that Human Rights Watch has, which is social justice messaging, seeing people watching from some of the deep red states across America was really, really important from there. So when we went back to in-person, once it was allowed, the festival also then still retained this online offering at the time, and it was incredible because it's revenue driving, there is commerciality there, but it was also incredibly powerful for the reach of those films.
Yeah, we'll come to the specifics. I just want to echo that point because you've made it very... so I've never heard a more beautiful defense of data and spreadsheets, but actually...
Love it.
If that is the way you capture stuff, and it does seem to me that in the hybrid world we're talking about, it has to be driven by data and knowledge. It cannot... That seems to me the missing link in lots of ways, and so I'm just echoing your impassioned kind of plea there, but it'd be quite useful to have some examples. So social impact is... It's the same as commercial impact in as much as if you can't reach different people and you can't engage them in different ways, then it doesn't have social impact. So perhaps you could give us some examples that would help illustrate your point.
Yeah, so we've had 2 that have happened in the last year, which I think are really key to share. So we are the agent for a wonderful film called Your Fat Friend by Jeannie Finley that premiered at Tribeca last year. First to say also, Jeannie is like a genius. I love her because she really understands marketing and brand, probably more than most filmmakers I've ever met. Like, she just really understands that she has to have a personal connection to audience and building up the brand of a film. So the film premiered at Tribeca last year, and before we boarded the project, Jeannie was in motion with planning a UK theatrical release of the film. And needed some P&A support. She was going to release directly through her company Glimmer, and kind of needed funding for travel and to bring the star of the film, Aubrey Gordon, over from America. For those who haven't seen the film, Aubrey is a fat blogger. I contractually have to say fat. She's not big boned, she's not large, she's fat. It's Your Fat Friend, that is the name of her blog. And we wanted to bring her over from Portland to the UK and then tour across the country, and that's travel and that's accommodation, is all those things. And Jeannie was effectively self-releasing via her company Glimmer. So there's a number of different ways you could raise that money, maybe a Kickstarter event, maybe kind of asking for grants. And Jeannie, alongside ourselves, were like, why don't we do like an online watch party? Maybe we could sell some premium kind of VOD offering, and that maybe raise some money. So we're kind of going in like, experiment number 1, let's see. And I think what our team does a lot is like, what's the experiment of this month that we're working on? Like every month there's like some new thing we're kind of trying. So we initially did a weekend watch party over Thanksgiving last year. Thanksgiving is a really terrible time for fat people. Like, you're constantly asked, do you want to have an extra potato? Do you want to have dessert? Like, it's a time of year when people just feel really like attacked the whole time. And Jeannie understood this. She understood her audience really well. She knew that they would want to have a kind of moment. And so Aubrey was willing to do an online watch party. The film, when Jeannie started making the film, Aubrey was an unknown author. By the end of the film, she's a New York Times bestselling author with multiple millions of podcast listeners. So we knew we had this like audience that were really obsessed with Aubrey. So the plan was a 72-hour viewing window, capped number of viewers, so we would not diminish the potential commercial return from other distributors we might want to work with in the future, and a premium price point at $25 per view, which also got you access to a live Q&A with Aubrey, and you could ask questions of Aubrey, direct the person that you're obsessed with. And Aubrey is like not, I would say, famous to the world, but famous to this demographic. They are obsessed. So I'm like, see what happens. And I can't say the full figures publicly, but within 4 hours, we sold out. Within 4 hours. And I can't say the number, but let's say it covered the entire UK tour in 4 hours on sale. So we're like, well, that went well. Okay, so same thing again. We were like, when's the next opportunity? So, and I have to credit Jeannie here because it was driven by her initial seed of an idea, and then we sort of kind of jumped on board. So the next time that we thought, okay, let's bring some community love, this idea of community being absolutely central to this, Christmas and the New Year is the next time that this community feel really like, oh God, everyone's always just commenting on what I look like on my weight. So we did another capped viewing experience over the Christmas New Year period. Again, Aubrey's coming to do an online chat. Again, within 4 hours, every single ticket got sold. And the amount of money made in just 8 hours on sale, because the viewing window was 72 hours, but it sold out in 4 hours. So in 8 hours of online sale potential, 6 figures. It's like insane for that. Yeah. So having that community understanding, knowing what makes sense for them. And the key thing here around access is many members of the FAT community felt ostracized from physical spaces. And Jeannie was very committed to asking every cinema, what is the size of your seats? And do you have armrests? Very simple questions. And she made every single cinema that booked the film, if you book my film, you have to give me that information so I can put it on the website. So you have audiences who felt ostracized in physical spaces, then like ecstatic to have an opportunity to say, God, you're inviting me into this online thing that's just for me, and you want me to be involved because you know I'm going to love it. And simultaneously ensuring that the physical spaces felt accessible to them. For Jeannie, is an accessibility point.
I think there's something really important here, and I think it's kind of coming through with everyone, is that technology has tended to be a rather impersonal thing, but this is actually an engine of personalization in some ways. It's creating closer relationships. And I think from a documentary perspective, whatever that might be, when you have a story, being able to connect to that story, it still requires you to feel like you somehow have access. Somehow you are part of a community, you can understand, you have a personal relationship. And I think the hybrid economy we're talking about here needs to be building more of that personalization, not less. And it feels like that's a good example. You had another example.
Yeah, so we recently boarded a film called Zorowski v. Texas, which premiered at Telluride, exec by Jennifer Lawrence and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. And this tells the story of the abortion bans that have happened across the US. Absolute horrendous situation that women are facing. So the story tells of 3 women who are desperate to have children and really want to build their families. They have medical complications and they are denied abortion access. And they end up pressuring the state for justice around this issue. And with the election that was happening in the US, there was a vital urgency to have this film out in some form during the election. Now, Telluride premiere to election, very small window of time between those two things happening, having the film finish, having it premiere, then coming out. So there was a variety of different activities that took place. The film was both in theatres traditionally. It was available for public sale at cinemas in New York and LA and Dallas and other places. And that was booked by the US team and a booker who kind of coordinated those. One of the partners on the film is Bumble, the dating app, if anyone's used that in the room. That's one of the partners. And that company was founded on the basis of equity for women. The founder herself had experienced a form of sexual assault in the previous company she worked at, and it was kind of women first in its position, and they were backers of the project. So Bumble actually supported a series of free impact screenings across America in cinemas, but allowing audiences to come for free to kind of see it, because the urgency of seeing it was really important. So in addition to these like physical screenings happening, like the rest of the country also needs to have access to this film. So again, we did a limited window availability. This time we used a platform called Eventive. So I always say everyone's name check because I'm not beholden to one. I like using all the different ones. Your fat friend, we use Kinema. So I say always look at all the different platforms to see which one makes sense for you. So with Eventive, we had a limited window availability online. It was going to be free access to audiences. And the note here for everyone being like, well, how do you do it free and what things, is a lot of our business is we work with a lot of philanthropists and foundations to cover the costs of all of these different experiments. So it should never be costing the filmmakers. It should be making sure it's covered by a third party. So a generous contributor said, I will make it available. I will help you make it available via this platform. So we had it available for free just before the election. We promoted this across various channels. We had a lot of very large supporters like Jennifer Aniston, Jessica Biel, Laura Dern, saying, if you have any questions about this particular issue of abortion, which was a huge election topic, we implore you to watch this film first. And in particular, the mother of Amanda Zorowski, one of the lead people in the film, her mother was a large Republican voter prior to this happening to her daughter. And in the film has a very important note. I always had voted Republican, and after watching my daughter go through this, there's no way I could do that again. So we wanted to have this kind of conversation. So thousands of people tuned in across the US during this weekend of viewing. We had an online conversation with the filmmakers in chats, and reading the comments. I'd never thought about this way before. I'd never thought about the realities of what this meant for people. My God, this is here. I had people writing to me saying, I will pay for a woman to seek an abortion and get out of state if she needs it. How do I send you money to do that? Like, think about the power of that, like that free window access that can generate that kind of interest and love. And again, we have all the data. I can see the map of every single person that watched. I have the email address of every single person that tuned in. They are now advocates, they're now ambassadors, and I'm using that data when I'm then going back to buyers at a market like IDFA and saying, this is just a tiny little, like, what we did in a weekend. Imagine if you had the rights for 10 years, what you could do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pity the Democratic Party didn't take a leaf out of the book there, because, that feels to me a lot, politicians could be doing the same thing. There's two things there: agility in terms of being able to do things and time things to when they can have the greatest impact. That seems to me one of the things about this hybrid world that's so essential. But you've also talking here about the ability of the filmmaker, or the person that wants to get that message across, to directly access audiences, or to find different ways to access audiences. And that feels to me, again, like something which is different than the approach that we have traditionally taken.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that every single filmmaker has to become a brand of themselves, but I think in the current marketplace, if you have the want and ability to be able to do creative things, I think it's highly recommended that you think about that really early. So building your audience really early. And people like Jeannie have had a newsletter for 10 years. She's on her 10th feature film. She's one of the kind of most prolific UK kind of directors. But she's had a newsletter for 10 years. And she can access that newsletter. She can speak to those different individuals. If you don't like social, think about email. If you do like social, do social properly, properly. When you're on the road, talk about where you are with your festivals. Start kind of following key accounts, like build up that community, because then you're ready to deploy like D2C communications when needed. And from a distribution point of view, when we're looking at the films we might acquire, like we've assessed like 650 titles this year. We signed 4. Like, we are like, what is the actual, like, right film, right issue, right creative kind of collaborative? And if you are a filmmaker in this room, building up some form of D2C relationship is just beneficial. You lean on your amazing distributors for their network of access. Yeah. But if you can come with, even like, I've got a newsletter of 1,000 people, great. That's the first 1,000 fans that you have. We can work with that. It's like, it doesn't have to be in its millions, but it's like you're starting to see that kind of relationship. So either as you as a filmmaker, your production company, whichever sort of way you want to kind of frame it, because a lot of film accounts become orphaned social media accounts after the film's finished, and it just kind of like go into the netherness of Instagram and X. So it might be your production company, might be the brand you want to build up, or you yourself as a creative. So definitely recommend you look at Jeannie, just as an example. She's on fire with this kind of stuff. But really think about your relationship D2C as a brand building.
No, I think that was very clear. What you're saying is you don't have to do it, but you bloody should if you've got any sense.
And look at your data, just my final play on data. If you have a website, look at your Google Analytics. Like, who's tuning in? Where are they coming from? Like, there's so much data that is completely free that you should be tracking all the time.
Okay. I'm going to move on to Greet. I think, again, like Marinia said earlier on, and Mark as well, is more... It does require more work, but that's the world we now live in, I think. More work, unfortunately, is what we're stuck with. But Greet, first of all, tell me about Move. That's a lot of O's.
We started out more than 30 years ago as a festival with World Cinema. But our area is an area with no art house theaters, and our audiences begged us to have also a year-round program with Arthouse so they could watch.
And this is Flanders?
It's in Flanders, yes. And then we grew through the years, and now we have 6 festival locations and a circuit of Arthouse, an Arthouse program through the years on 10 locations, mainly in one province in Limburg and in the province of Antwerp. but we also are a small distributor of world cinema, and we have a school program, a curated school program, and since COVID, we are also online.
So again, this is something where you have to begin by just reaching out to places that don't have that cinema stuff. So the idea that you can have an old school that begins with a cinema, that works much better where there is a cinema than when there isn't. But the hybrid, the online approach, how did you develop that? And was it difficult? Were there partners? Were there roadblocks along the way?
We started out only for schools. It was already before COVID because it was just a practical thing. Each year at the beginning of the school year, we want teachers to watch all the movies from the school program for free, just to make sure that they pick out the right movies for their pupils and students. And we used to do it in different theaters, where we have our festival, but it was so, it took so much time. It was very, it costed a lot of money, and it took a lot of time of our staff members. So we decided to do it online with Vimeo, but since Vimeo isn't that secure and you can rip down the movies, when COVID came, we had to talk about streaming, and we did that with some Dutch partners, Medialoc, for instance. And we noticed that our general public could find their way to our festival program, but schools, they dropped out. Because you can't put school screenings online, and the difficulty was that we know that a lot of schools just have one, they rip a movie or they lend out one DVD and they watch it with thousands, but they don't pay for anything. Yeah. So we decided to make a personalized platform for schools, and with a curated program, and schools can contact us. They get a personal web page with only the movies they reserved for a specific period they want. And after the screening, we send them the bill, and they pay a fee per view for each pupil. And it's just click and watch with no account, but it's only for their school. So also children who are sick at home or during COVID who had to stay home could watch without having to make an account. So it's just a simple thing, and half of the fee goes to the distributor and the other half is for data streaming and for the administration. And also at the beginning of at the school year, since we have this own platform, we build it up for teachers, and the first weekend of October they get access to all the whole school program and can watch it free online from Friday evening 4 o'clock until Sunday midnight, just at home, and can pick out all the movies they want.
And how enthusiastic are distributors for?
For schools, it's no problem, because they understand that schools also watch movies for free at school without paying anything. But since it worked very smooth and and it was very successful, in the past we also had a project with libraries, and we had a curated DVD box which traveled through Flanders, through all the libraries, and we had 3 DVD boxes a year with built around different themes. So we had, at the end of a few years, we had more than 300 boxes traveling around through libraries, and nobody cared that there were DVDs, and still libraries have DVD collections. Nobody cares that libraries rent out give out the DVDs for free to their members. But since the drop of DVD production, we thought, why don't we use a platform and integrate it in the website of the libraries, because that's what Medialoc and Individeo are good at. They implement the player in the website of the libraries. So we thought, when we can make a digital collection for the libraries, then the members can watch it online, and libraries pay for it, and we close a deal with the distributors. But then the distributors say, no, we won't do that, because then too many people can watch for free, but they don't care if it's with a DVD, but online they don't want to. Or otherwise they say, well, we want a flat fee, but the flat fee was too high, because if you don't have, let's say, 30 libraries in one go who want to connect, we as Move, we would go down financially, because we can't afford to pay the flat fees.
What's the problem with, I should ask Mark really, what is the problem with libraries? What's different about streaming or in libraries as opposed to DVDs? Do you know?
Libraries, library.
Yeah, giving
library.
yeah, streaming in for libraries. What Gert's saying is that it's actually, distributors are not enthusiastic about allowing their films to be streamed and available through libraries.
Well, I think that's not, in the Netherlands, the services also that do a lot of the educational side of things, schools and libraries and all that, these kind of institutions. And it brings every year, maybe not 6-digit amounts, but let's say for us like 5-digit amounts. So it's something that is really important, and also for the type of films we do, that's a place where you want the films to be seen. And I think the easier we can make it, the better it is, because schools do not have the infrastructure always to do it. So if you can make it easy, and now they can easily, like stream something and pay a small fee instead of, like using like pirate versions or illegal versions.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I think perhaps we're at a stage still, as we were talking about earlier on, that the technical ability to do things and the cultural mechanisms and the business mechanisms for making them work aren't necessarily aligned at this stage. But the point you're making, I think, is that your mission is to expand that audience for Arthouse film, and that's expanding it socially, it's expanding it in terms of age. And that still seems to me the number one issue for me about the hybrid economy is it more likely to engage the diversity of audiences than the old world? Because if it isn't, then clearly we have issues.
I'm quite sure that if you do it hybrid, especially for schools, you reach out more audience, because not in Flanders you don't have the landscape like you have in the Netherlands. There are only few Arthouse cinemas, a few multiplexes, but not every school is in the neighborhood of a theater. So if you offer them a way to watch the movies in school, then you can reach out more audiences. So we want them to come to the theater, but not everybody is possible to come, because they have to take the bus, which is quite expensive. They have to drive for more than an hour. So if we bring the movie to schools, we can reach out to more audience.
Yeah, I can see that. So there's a mission there, and you're just operating in the realities that where there is no cinema, you have to find different approaches. Okay, I'm going to just see if there's any questions, and then there's some kind of follow-up stuff that's going on. But should we see if there are any questions from the audience? If you are going to ask a question, you put your hand up and just say your name and where you're from. Yep, there's one over there.
Hello, Marta Szłonowska from Poland, from production company. I would have a question to Sarah Moses. I was wondering if you are working only in UK and US market or also in Europe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
could I just make sure that everyone heard that question? Is it just the UK and the US?
So from a direct distribution point of view in theatres, we're only covering the UK and US. We just had Mediha open the Film Forum in New York and we'll be in UK cinemas next Friday. But from an impact perspective, we work across global campaigns. So the whole of Europe, we work with Patagonia on their climate change campaigns, pan-European, multiple language, subtitles, kind of outreach, and half of our team are in America, so we do US-wide as well. So the projects that we sign can from filmmakers anywhere around the world, but theatrical, we'd only do UK and US, but non-theatrical and campaigns, we do pan-European and US. And sometimes we respond to inbound requests from international, so we might have an inbound request from South Africa or Australia, and we'll service those requests as they come in, if we have the rights.
Is Europe more complex in terms of doing what you do? Is that kind of fragmented Europe a more complex area to deal with?
I think everything's got complexity in terms of like rights availability. So with our impact campaigns, the most important right for us is non-theatrical abilities. So most filmmakers come to us saying, I really want to do a screening in schools, or I want to do a screening with parliamentarians. And usually we're talking about the category of rights of non-theatrical and educational. So the only complexity really is who owns those rights and who has access to them. So if we're in a position where we have the rights non-theatrically across the whole of Europe, then it's pretty easy because we can just go forward. If we're in a situation where there's an all rights deal in France, there's an all rights deal in Norway and an all rights deal in Italy, then I might be liaising with a distributor in that territory to say, hey, we've had a request, they want to screen it, would you like to approve that? If so, is that fee okay? Can we send you the commission from it? It's then just around sort of who has the right in that territory to do something. So with Patagonia, for example, when we do campaigns with them, we have the non-theatrical rights across the whole of Europe. It's really seamless. And then the international sales side, it's just working out, are we liaising with our distribution partners because they've taken the film in their country, which we love, thank you very much, or are we still retaining those rights and we're doing it directly? But from an impact position, it's just planning and coordination to make those things happen.
Okay, and lots of spreadsheets, of course. Lovely, lovely
so
spreadsheets.
Many, or a really good database. Don't have too many spreadsheets, have it all in one place.
Sounds lovely. I'd love to go round to your house where no doubt you have the whole thing set. I'm imagining you in a room with loads of TVs like David Bowie and The Man Who Fell to Earth.
It's not a joke, it's true.
Has anyone got any other questions? Okay, I'm going to ask the questions then that I think you were, a lot of you are thinking, which is, we're talking about the distribution landscape, and that's that bit, but if you're a producer and you're making and a filmmaker right now, Mark, you take stuff from, a lot of stuff comes from script, doesn't it, from those stages. In this kind of changed environment, are there ways that producers of diverse and exciting content can better use this world to get their films to audiences?
Well, I think, from what Sarah was talking about, if you look at the music industry, for example, you see that more and more bands or artists can actually reach out directly, to put their stuff online. And, if they have a great community, they can do that, So we tend to have, we acquire film or we develop also increasingly or finance films. But for instance, in the same sort of area as you were talking about, we had a film called Bigger Than Us, which was a documentary, which was also, impact documentary. And we then, for example, did a fairly traditional theatrical release, but at the same time, we had these brands and these partners like Deloitte or whatever that wanted to show the film. So we also selected a platform that we could use and made that film available at the same time or even before to these brands that wanted to share with their partners or with their employees and stuff like that. So suddenly, in that example, the person that made the documentary or which also directed it is also someone that got involved with us to make that impact.
Yeah, so those relationships, sorry, Sarah.
I was just going to echo on that as well. So we do a lot of corporate screenings, and it's a category that I think most people don't think about, but they're brilliant. If you have the right kind of film, they're really, really brilliant. Because the other thing that corporates are really great at is paying you a speaker's fee. And when you think about filmmaker sustainability and how you're compensating your work, we'll have a license fee for the corporate, the brand will pay to buy the film on behalf of their employees. And then we'll say, great, and you want the director to come as well, right? That'd be really great to have them there. And the level of fee you could ask a corporate, because they're used to paying speakers' fees, you're not asking for $200, you're asking for $2,000, because that's what the level they'll do. So if you're a filmmaker, it doesn't work for all films, but if you have a film that may resonate in the CSR team, the sustainability team, ask for a speaking fee, because they will usually pay it, and whatever your normal fee is, quadruple it, and they will normally pay that. So
I'm in the wrong business. There's no question about this.
They paid up front for a fee for watching it online, but the other sources of revenues we didn't really do so. We asked for a lunch, I think.
Yeah.
But Sarah
Always
will
ask
call
for a
you.
fee.
Was it like pineapples and caviar, though? That's what we want to know. I'm still trying to nail this idea. It's a question for all of you, really. It's still, the music industry is a very good example where it's much easier to make music and to get out there than ever before, and AI will supercharge that to an extent. But viable, sustainable business or indeed social impact on the back of that's a different matter. It's trying to engage those audiences. What I'm trying to get to is, in this world that we're talking about, are there mechanisms that would mean that filmmakers and producers can use, what can they do and what should they do to make sure that the work they're doing right now is more likely to have that commercial and social impact? Because I'm hearing lots of ways that I can see is valuable for audiences, but surely the content changes as well. Sarah, you kind of on that subject.
I think I say this to a lot of filmmakers when they're developing their projects. There's two different ways you can develop. You can say, what is the market wanting to buy right now? I'm going to make something that fits that, which is what a lot of very successful production companies do. They listen to the market trends, they see what's being acquired, and they say, okay, this makes sense in that manner. I know a lot of filmmakers who hate me when I say that, and they're like, I don't want to make art that way. I want to make what I want to make. And so if you're in that lane, which is great because we need those stories, and so many of the vital stories, especially in social justice, come from that lens, is you have to be thinking about audience from the beginning. So when you're developing out the project, you don't have to be an audience geek like me, but it's like, have a think to yourself, who's actually going to watch this? And what are those demographics and which countries might be useful? So when we're speaking with film teams early on, it's like, okay, you've made this film about this particular human rights issue. Who talks about that in the press landscape? Can you send me 10 articles of anyone who's written about this prior? Which journalists are interested in this? Are there any influential partners and groups? So with Mediha, we partnered with Women for Women. They both hosted our film forum opening in New York. They did an online screening. They did a corporate screening. It's like all the incredible kind of efforts that they've gone around because the film represents exactly the mission that they're talking to. So when you're developing out the project, if you're not specifically making work that you know is in the marketplace requirements of today and what the market is actively saying, we want more of X, then it is vital that you draft up some notes on what your audience intentions are at the beginning. And funders will also ask this. So I come from a fund background. I used to be at Doc Society. If you now apply for Sundance, if you apply for any of those funders, there is a question that says, what is your audience engagement strategy? And you cannot just put, my film isn't for everyone around the world. No film is for everyone. Literally no film, like Star Wars, the biggest films on the planet. I don't like Star Wars, I'm not that person. You have to have specificity. So give them some information. Give them, this film is about this X community, and across the US, there are X number of people who are from that background, and they live in these cities, so we're going to go to these cities. Give them some information. All of this you can just Google.
I think that richness of data, I was chair of a film fund for 7 years, and during that time, people did realize they couldn't put it's for everyone, but then they ended up just making up a demographic, and they'd say, oh, it's for women between the ages of 17 and 31. And it became this kind of, you felt like you had to do something, but actually the world that you're pointing to is one where the richness of the data, the realities of how they behave actually is essential if you want to have a strategy which is really going to have the impact commercially or indeed in terms of social impact.
I saw in the trades this week a Brahmarama They're a distributor in the US, lovely team. They just released a Filipino story in the US market, and the trade release that talked about the box office success of that release specifically outlined how they researched where were the highest rates of Filipino community across the US. They booked theatres in those locations, and surprise, surprise, there was more turnout than other kind of areas. So we always default to, like, we must open in New York and LA. But if your community isn't there, why would you really put all of your effort in that location? So it was in the trades. If you look at the box office results of this weekend, there's an article about it and a Brahma. They're very savvy to this kind of stuff. I big up Carol and the team. But it's a really clear example, like, take the film to the cities where you might have the biggest box office leverage rather than trying to force it into a market where maybe your community isn't necessarily going to be. So take the film where it should go, not where you think it is expected to go. I think it's important.
Yeah, you just can't get a good flat white in Sioux Falls. That's the problem. But Marinia, just quickly, I mean, the other thing that I think is key, if, as Mark pointed out and you pointed out, cinemas are gatekeepers, they're important. That relationship between filmmaker and cinema feels to me something which there's still further room for exploration. And from your point of view, presumably speaking to filmmakers is actually quite a useful thing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the easiest relationship for us is a relationship with the distributor, because that makes this thing easy. We get the ready product, sort of ready film. But we do sometimes deal with producers or filmmakers themselves, especially when we are, for example, searching for a specially themed film, because we often are trying to reach like niche audiences that are interested in various subjects, like, I don't know, skateboarders or climbers, travelers, and then we are looking for films films of these themes, and we often, of course, talk directly to the producers or the filmmakers, and we can organize a single screening, a meeting, an event. We can also put the film on our online platform, but that requires a lot of work. That would require, you know, a team doubled of my team of doubled size. So this is not something that we can physically do a lot. Sometimes we do it, but it's not that easy. I mean, this is what we love. This is curation in the best way, but it requires many, you know, men force or women force power.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and again, that idea that this is more work, I think you can't run away from that. I'm going to ask one final question, but is there anyone else from the audience who wants to ask one last question? Okay, just the final short, brief sign-off question, then I'll start with you, Ruud, if I can. We talked about here, I think we've had a good overview of the realities of this kind of hybrid economy that's kind of emerged. And as Mark pointed out at the beginning, it's part of an evolution that's been going on for a while. And we talked about the fact that we need to reach, this is ways of reaching more people, engaging more people, and having that impact. But what I want from each of you is just what's missing that actually, for you, that last bit in a short answer, what do we still need to do in order to be able to make, to bring together the culture and the business with this technical opportunity to be hybrid?
I think for us, I can only speak for us, is learning to use the data. So maybe we should join the lunch. And also trust, because everything that happens online is built on trust. Trust between the one putting the movies online and the distributors or the sales. Trusting them that you pay a fair price for the views and yeah.
That's a great one to actually to point out, that you need to have that business trust relationship in order to be able to move forward at all. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult for your mission to actually achieve its goals. So that's a great one to start with. Mark, you're again, what's missing and what do you see is necessary over the next few years?
Probably many things, but the one I think about now is that also it's the accessibility of data, because we, you know, like in the office and Thomas' role, we can gather up to a certain extent, so it depends on whether cinema want to share that data. I mean, Cineville is sharing it, but it's always up to a certain extent. And maybe as we are all part of the same ecosystem, and I understand data is always tricky because of privacy and all these things, but if all the stakeholders we work with, are they streamers or are there VOD platforms or cinema, could share information that is slightly better so that we can think about it and make better educated guess or decisions on that basis.
Yeah, I think data is the thing that's coming through most in all of these things, that you can't talk about the audience in the abstract. There are ways now that we can understand more about how our audience thinks and behaves, but it needs a different approach, and I thought you put that very well. Marinia?
Yeah, when I think of data, I definitely, from the example of my cinema, this is what we want to do. We want to try to combine more the data of the offline cinema and the online viewership. This is something that we want to work on to bring more people from the online to the offline and from the offline to the online. So this migration, we want to be able to do it based on data. So this is like a future task for us to do, I guess.
Yeah, and come to you, Sarah, just because I think this point's already been made before you make your own point, but I think there's this distinction. Data is something that feels almost like cheating. It's like if we know lots about our audience, then are we just not going to end up giving the lowest common denominator? And that's not what your business is about. That's not what other people's business is about. So that sense of how understanding how audiences think and behave can actually help diversity and new ideas, I think is really something I'd like you to just discuss in your final answer.
Yeah, I think data transparency is essential, and it removes this element of hierarchy and gatekeeping because we're all on a leveler playing field. We understand that. There's a report recently launched by Eventive, and they've sold 10 million tickets through their platform over recent years. And if you're a festival manager or distributor, I highly recommend you read this report they've just published that looks at audience trends. But I think the power with the kind of data and thinking about audiences, if you take that to kind of the Your Fat Friend example, the box office success of that film would probably in an industry standard never have been like, oh wow, what a success, you got this number of people into cinemas. But when you layer on the amount of incredible viewership, and that was just two examples, there's more experience of happened with that film online. The success of this film is a huge success of a documentary in this kind of year. But the only thing we all talk about as an industry is, what was the box office numbers?
Yeah.
How many people came in person? Nobody says, how many people actually watched online? What was your revenue online? We don't, as an industry yet, have the language and the vocabulary to celebrate the online opportunity that we have. So I feel like we can't move into a fully celebrated hybrid industry unless we celebrate the online viewership as a key central part of a release strategy. We have to get past this notion of you're only successful if your box office opening weekend was X number, because the amount of revenue directly back to the producers and the financiers for that particular example far surpasses what some of the most highly successful box office figures would be for the year. Because once you take out the cinema share, once you take out the distributor share, when you take out the P&A expenses on a box office release, on a cinema release, those widely successful films you hear about have probably not actually recouped that much money to the financiers and the producers. But with online experimentation, you're actually netting out so much more, but we don't as an industry celebrate it. So I think collectively we need to get to this point where we can analyze box office online at the same time. We can celebrate that because there are certain films that are thriving in that environment, but we don't as an industry see it as a success because it was, oh, that was just online. It should be, what was the collective result of that film? And ultimately, did it return to your investors? Did it return to your producers? And that, for me, is success. And did it have a social impact? Because that's what we like.
Okay, I think that's a great way into just the summing up of what we've been talking about. So, Norcia and Anke at the beginning, it's possible to do these things. I thought both of them made a very key point, which is that it's not the same in every country. It's not the same in every territory. And again, the thing that we keep coming back to is it requires work. This world means more work, and it means more work, I think we're saying, starting with those here who are filmmakers and producers. That audience journey needs to begin much more with you. The second thing I think comes out really clearly is that this isn't just about reach as in numbers, which is exactly what you were saying there. We have got the technical means to do things, but the culture, and the culture in its broadest sense, so the way that money works, the way we think about success, the approaches that we take require a different thinking. And at the moment, we probably are in a position where we have the technology and the opportunity, but we still haven't yet got the infrastructure and the culture to actually make that work in ways that could work. And I think the positive is if we can bring that together, what I'm hearing from the panel is if you can make that work and you can make that culturally work, you can get that data in there, you can rethink the way that audiences, your attitude towards audiences and understand them better. There is that opportunity for reaching beyond. It's not what the Netflix is doing, the big algorithms. I can't speak anymore. It's not about those. It's not about those. It's about saying the diversity of film, the different ideas, that notion of diversity. It has to mean diversity of audiences as well as diversity of content. But it is possible to bring those together, that the tools are emerging to do that. But we have a big cultural shift still to really shape this world in ways that work best for documentary, for European culture, for diversity, and for all the things that we see as virtues and importance of film itself. So if that's okay, thanks to the panel. And if I can have a little swap, we're going to bring up Maria Silvia Gatta. Yeah, you can step down if you like. Otherwise, you're going to be miles away. Thank you. Come and sit here, otherwise you're going to be a mile away. It'll look like Brexit. So first of all, we're just going to have a brief chat if we can. So just first of all, your impressions when you're listening to this idea of a changing culture. You know, Creative Europe, I think, is certainly one of the organizations. You're pushing this to an extent. When you listen to that and you hear about perhaps some of the disconnections of culture, do you have any particular thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you for this panel. You've been really bombarding us and really with ideas, with perceptions, with an incredible amount of information. But I think to me, if I can add to your conclusions, I think this panel is really the personification of what we call the multiplicity that Deleuze was describing 30 years ago. And we're really fully into this kind of multiple society, multiplicity of vision of society, in which to make sense and to understand and to keep a sort of direction is very challenging. But to absorb this multiplicity is the way we can understand and make sense of what we're doing. So to me, and this at European level translates on this tension that the Creative Europe program has been trying to understand, this tension between a program that wants to support an industry, the audiovisual industry, but wants to support cultural diversity at the same time. Now, if we understand, and I think this panel was very useful in moving away from this kind of dichotomy and try to really embrace the powerful synergies that you can have between a business approach and a cultural approach, I think you've given enough elements on what we need to understand and to use technology in an intelligent way. So being intelligent with the artificial intelligence in a way, which is a challenge. But it is the way to really make the European audiovisual ecosystem impactful and meaningful for the citizens. So that was, to me, it remains to me a big question to which we are all looking for answers. What do we do in Europe? We are in the middle of a transition. And we're in the middle of an international environment that is very challenging for everybody in terms of security, in terms of change of power, global power division, all questions that really belong to all of us. And for the Commission now, it's a transition towards a new phase that really put competitiveness at the core of the European policies. Competitiveness certainly is clearly an economic concept, but it's also a way of surviving for Europe, a way of surviving in a very multipolar environment. And how do we translate this to the audiovisual industry? Certainly trying to address the way you are doing and you presented here, trying to address technological changes in an intelligent way, trying to see beyond the trees and to keep seeing the light, and understanding that reaching out to public, reaching out to a diverse public, including new voices, understanding diversity, is something that can be done with an intelligent use of technologies, as you did. And I think that for us, there are fundamental issues like we're producing films in Europe. These films need to find their audiences, and that's a very down-to-earth reality. Because if you produce for producing, you're not helping neither the industry nor the European citizens. In terms of outreach, you know that the Creative Europe program has been very active in securing audience outreach since its outset in 1991. I'm very happy to go back to what Europa Cinema has been doing and all the experiments that Europa Cinema have been producing in the last 30 years. Of course, COVID, we see it as an accelerator, COVID, of pre-existing trends. We have been also taking the COVID episode, let's put it this way, as a way of supporting and promoting innovation primarily of the cinema-going experience, by trying to find new ways to engage with audiences clearly outside the walls during the four walls of a cinema during the COVID crisis, clearly. But we have tried also, together with Europa Cinema primarily, but also with the distributors and also with some platforms and also with Reachem, to really investigate how we can move away from an idea of cinema as a sort of closed world where you experience together a cinema and where where the works find their audiences. No, we have to move beyond. We have to have the same kind of public also outside the four walls of cinemas. Where are we now? And then I stopped, Michael, because you said that I had to be very short, but it was so interesting what we just heard that makes me feel like chatty, and I shouldn't be. Anyway, where are we now? Now we have this element of competitiveness that we all have to oblige with. We have this element of technology with our new, hopefully, executive vice president who's really into this kind of world. Where are we? Cinemas, we reach out to new audiences means also having the structures in Europe to be able to really reach out to audiences. Now, we have identified, and I think that the report UNIC, SICAE and Europa Cinema provided in June was really very clear on highlighting the fact that we have areas of Europe that do not have any cultural infrastructure nor cinema. So equality of access to culture and cinematic experience, it's one of our priority in the new in the coming years. We want to address what we have identified as cinema deserts, and we want to do it in the most innovative and intelligent way possible, hence also including technological experiences. And how do we want to do it? We need there, and I think that Sarah was very clear, we need to have cooperation on data sharing and data analysis, and we need to have more kind of Great, I don't see you, but your experience in bringing really cinematic experience to new areas. I stop it here.
Well, that was brilliant. You answered every question I was going to ask.
I took you for counterfoot, huh?
No, that's brilliant. You could have kept moving between seats, because you've answered the key thing. It seems to me European cultural diversity still matters, and we have to work out mechanisms for making European cultural diversity work, not just in developed countries, but right across the whole of Europe. And that feels to me what you put brilliantly in your it's called a monologue. It was fantastic.
It was a monologue.
It was beautiful. Well, I thought that was great. So I have nothing more to ask you, really, other than just the next stage of programs, I presume. What's the next big thing that's coming along?
Well, we have, again, we're in a transition period, so we're really waiting for for the consolidation of a new policy guideline. We are, the times of Brussels. Unfortunately, you all know them. So what does it mean? That this current program is going to be over in 2027. So we have 2 years to go, in which we're going to have the same, going to have a continuation of what we have been doing so far. But we are looking at pilot projects and, sort of pilot action on tackling cinema deserts in the next 2 years. We are looking at new innovative business models, which is one of the most interesting actions we have so far. So we're really taking these 2 years to investigate what works, to understand the kind of innovation that you are all bringing about, and really trying to take these 2 years to shape it into the new program in 2027. Now, don't ask me the shape and the amounts. We're going to have to think about it all together, but I'm sure you all will be part of this reflection.
And I was going to ask you about the shape and the amount, but let's first of all, there will be an opportunity to talk to the Commission. Is Emma here from yes, there we go. So if you're looking at talking to someone in the media desk here, you can grab Emma on the way out. Otherwise, I think I thought you put the whole discussion into really great shape, which made my job a hell of a lot easier. I can go off to my corporate now and make 4 times as much money talking to Deloitte. But thanks to everyone for coming. Thanks to Picl. Thanks to Reacham, which I've decided is a brilliant name. And enjoy the rest of IDFA.